All right, Dan, AEW Revolution, week and a half away, and they're trying to set things up and build it up in a number of areas. I thought this was, and I don't usually start kind of macro, but I will here instead of picking one issue out. I thought this was a good 2-hour episode of Dynamite. Didn't feel blockbuster, but it didn't feel like it was trying too hard. But I kind of felt almost that rule of 2.5s coming out of it, where they didn't throw so much out there. You knew what the important stuff was, and everything else was entertaining enough, but didn't get in the way. The important stuff, MJF and Hangman Page, early, late, the situation and then Will Ospreay and the Don Callis family and Kenny Omega. That's the number 2 most important item. And then, you can kind of take your pick of what the third thing is, but those were like, and then, I'm sorry, Copeland and Moxley. So those are kind of the three big things, maybe not 2.5, maybe 3, but those are the 3 feuds they're focused on the most right now. And I thought they just checked the boxes. I don't think it came across red hot. I've got a little critique of a couple things here and there. But to me, this just, it felt like a mature, well-formatted, nicely paced show, other than, the chair shots to the head stuff, which is nonsense. We shouldn't even be teasing it, even if the camera angle reveals how fake it is, which also makes it completely pointless to do something that isn't even entertaining anymore. We'll get into that later. Dan, your thoughts on the big picture on the show?
Yeah, I was thinking about saying this, and I didn't want to sound too cynical, but now what you said kind of reinforces it. I felt like paint by numbers is an accurate description of what they were doing. Nothing really unexpected, but that's not always a bad thing.
Right.
The only thing I might suggest is I feel like the Storm Mariah May match is in the conversation, at least for as important as some of those others.
But and on tonight's show,
not on the show,
that's my point.
So they held back a little bit. But I think it is one of the top matches. But they chose to focus on what you mentioned, and they showed a nice video package on Tony and Mariah, but that doesn't really do the same to get people's memory stoked as much as the actual show itself. So, yeah.
No, and you can definitely make the argument that's a big match, and they ought to do more. And they did. And obviously, it was the angle with Swerve and Ricochet. That's a big deal, too. And that got even more attention than Tony Storm and Mariah May, although Storm and Mariah was the big focus of Collision. They're putting more focus on Collision. One of the things I liked about tonight's show is they did more of a look back at Collision and a look forward to Collision. Collision feels like it's part of the rhythm of AEW storylines and not an afterthought. And it's going to take some time to convince people this is a show they need to watch every week if they're not, but I think these were steps in the right direction. But as Ramen Noodle pointed out in the chat, and I caught it peripherally, the Swerve Ricochet storyline heated up nicely and got a good amount of time. So, but your point is well taken in that for sure is, from a pay-per-view depth standpoint, a big match, and some people would have a number 1 looking at this lineup. Right. People don't care about Copeland that much, and Will Ospreay, whatever. There's other matches where people can kind of be like, yeah, to me, that the continuation of that feud is what I'm most interested in. But on this show, they didn't overdo it. And that's kind of my point, is like, the rule of 2.5. I mean, I think we're up to 4 now when we count Swerve and Ricochet, but I did feel it was paced well. The video packages were well done, didn't overstay their welcome. They built up the main event, which was, I wouldn't say self-contained, but it wasn't, because it's a step towards the Kenny Omega match. So it's related to Callis, but it also, they didn't just, the video package on Orange Cassidy having a huge history with that title, I think was a good, not just perfunctory, but fruitful way to add a little doubt. Maybe this is his belt. Maybe this is his night. And maybe we're going to see Omega versus Ospreay, Cassidy and the Takeshita matches later. So I think they did a good job owning the main event and not looking past it, so that it felt like fait accompli, that it's just, of course, going to be Takeshita winning, even though, of course, Takeshita was going to win.
Right.
Dan,
right.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's right. I mean, going into the show, there wasn't a lot of intrigue about much of anything, really. But that's, again, it's not optimal, but it could be okay, particularly when they're building to something bigger. I'm seeing a lot of comments pop up as I'm speaking here, and
don't ignore them until I read them. Otherwise, you'll be overwhelmed.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, but but again, I have been. The problem for me right now, Wade, is my Missouri Tigers here are top 10 in the net rank, or what is it, the Ken Palm. Anyway, college basketball is my thing, and it's been really great right now. And Saturday nights, I usually end up flipping on Collision a little bit, but I'm focusing. I've got 2 TVs on right now in the background. If we can move up in the SEC standings and all this stuff. So it's not my time of year to be totally focused on wrestling. I know that's blasphemy in March for some people, in February. But yeah, I have been trying to catch Collision. I did watch the Australia show, and I think a lot of people did.
Yeah.
And that didn't really strike me as a collision per se, even though it technically was. But they have been doing a better job, and there is some good synchronicity there, for lack of a better word, between the programs, and I think they're only asking you to watch 4 hours a week. I mean, they could get people that enjoy the product enough to at least check in on Collision and maybe see what, zip through it or nothing else. And I think that they're building a little momentum there.
Yeah, we'll go over these segments. We're kind of brushing over. Like I said, I rarely start with macro because it can be a little overwhelming. Sure. But to me, that was the story of the show. We're seeing it in some of the reader comment and some of the chat room comments. I'll throw that up. Kyle Fassel says the pacing has been improved the last few weeks or so. I want to pull up. Oh, yeah, this was a standard deviation. Good point. They seem to be spreading the key moments across both shows instead of cramming everything into Dynamite. Fan Blast notes Collision did a good number last week. And, it should go up. I mean, one, just being in a regular time slot, a little bit, I think get into your argument, Dan. There's a lot of competition, and AEW is always going to have competition on Saturdays, seasonally, some more than others. And I think Grand Slam after the NBA game brought in some new viewers. They did a terrible job convincing people or tempting people who are watching the NBA, who might be casual pro wrestling or WWE fans, to watch. The coordination that should have been much better. But that said, certainly the number was better than usual, and it brought in some new fans. And for you, like you said, for AEW fans who try to watch or always watch Dynamite and Collision feels sort of optional, or I'll speed through it, or I'll catch up on highlights, that Grand Slam event reminded them that this is something that they got to build around their schedule. And so I think they improved because of that. It just reminded people, that's right, this is a show I can make time for. The number was 421,000 viewers Saturday. Grand Slam the week before did 502,000, but the week before that was 387. So they're up, 45,000 from where they were 2 weeks ago for a regular show. And they had been in the, mid 2s to mid 3s with a lot of time slot shifting. But I'm looking at my chart. The last time they did more than 400,000 viewers otherwise was back on September 28th. So 2 weeks in a row over 400. So they might be feeling a little momentum, and they closed the show as Takeshita was celebrating with Callis, plugging Collision, which makes sense. It wasn't some rapid fire thing from Excalibur before the main event. They talked about Danny Garcia against Adam Cole, TNT title. I want to talk about that. That's noteworthy. FTR against O'Reilly and Strong, just kind of a spin-off of the six-man tag that filled some time with good wrestling tonight. And then a Kenny Omega promo to build up the Takeshita match. And Omega on Collision sends a signal to AEW fans. Collision is relevant again. It is deserving of your attention. Dan, some of your thoughts on that.
I just think that they are finding a little better rhythm, a little better, again, I said synchronicity before. Where things kind of tend to tie together pretty well. And there was a time there where it after CM Punk left, obviously, where it just felt like you weren't going to see too many of the big names on Collision for whatever reason, except for Bryan Danielson. And so people got out of the habit of watching. And I think generally that was a mistake. This is the A show, and that's fine, but you don't have enough television that your secondary show doesn't have to be an A-.
Yep. Chris Johnson in the chat said, I had the exact same thoughts tonight for the first time since CM Punk. I felt like maybe I'll give Collision a try. Back to the talk about the format tonight, Standard Deviation said the show opened with a series of storyline-driven segments that bled into each other, and the first full match didn't begin until 18 minutes into the show. This format is more accommodating for newer viewers. And really, sometimes we get hung up on newer viewers, but it's also more accommodating to people with busy lives who look at wrestling for entertainment, but they don't keep track because they're not thinking 7 days a week like Tony Khan about this product. They're not on social media constantly. They're not even listening to podcasts like this. They need to kind of have it sort of spoon-fed to them. This is the most important storyline. Here's the development related to it. And we've made progress this week because we've heard from people involved. Things have been elevated. So, I just thought the way Standard Deviation phrased it, one kind of flowed into the other, and it made you care about the characters, understand who they are, and then when they're wrestling and what's at stake.
And Wade, I don't think they had a commercial break until at least 18 minutes in. Yep. And I'm not saying that as a bad thing. I don't think they have to do it every week, but because again, I was watching some of these basketball scores. I'm like, I'm going to switch over on the commercial. And I looked up and I'm like, I still haven't switched to check this score because they've bled one thing into the other. And it was all, pretty big time stuff. So I think that's a good way to, you could sacrifice a little bit of your commercial breaks at the beginning of the show and catch up as the show goes on. And you might be able to keep an audience better that way. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did.
All right, so let's pause. Let's introduce ourselves in the show. And then what we're going to do is something we don't normally do, but we're going to just go through the show in chronological order and kind of cover it, because I do think, as Standard Deviation said, one thing flowed into the other, and I think it's a good way to cover what we did. Again, it's normally what I do on the Wade Keller Hotline when I'm just going through everything. I'm not going to detail it like I do in the Wade Keller Hotline, but I want to get our opinions and our thoughts, because a number of developments here, and I don't want anything to slip by, both some mostly positive, but I think a few negative things here and there too, worth bringing up. This is the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Post Show for Wednesday, February 26, 2025, and I'm the host of the show, Wade Keller, editor, publisher, and founder of the Pro Wrestling Torch newsletter and the website PWTorch.com. You can read my live coverage of Dynamite, Raw, and SmackDown every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, along with my coverage of PLEs and pay-per-views on the weekends, including WWE Elimination Chamber Saturday and the AEW Revolution a week from Sunday. So check out our website, PWTorch.com, for that. Even better yet, go VIP. And when you go VIP, you get access to an ad-free, clutter-free, streamlined version of PWTorch.com. It's PWTorchVIP.com, aptly named, easy to find. And when you do that, you get ad-free access to not only our current content, but also our archives, including hundreds of retro radio shows from the 90s, 20 plus years of podcasts on demand, a new newsletter every week with exclusive articles, including Greg Parks' feature column. Greg Parks, by the way, Pro Wrestling Torch columnist, joined me on the Wade Keller Pro Wrestling podcast last night, are on the flagship edition. So if you haven't checked that out yet, search PW Torch on your podcast app and subscribe. It is only a podcast, not on YouTube. So if you're finding us on YouTube, you'll definitely want to subscribe to our podcast feed. Search Wade Keller on your podcast app, and you'll see the blue logo show and the red logo show. Blue logo is the regular podcast, including our weekly flagship. The red logo show is the podcast version of our post shows. That feed includes flashbacks from 5, 10, and sometimes 15 years ago. So search Wade Keller and subscribe to those. But we are here to talk Dynamite, and we are inviting you to join us in that conversation. I've already made reference to our chat room interacting as we live stream here on YouTube. And we, by the way, invite you to join us live on YouTube after Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown, and also this Saturday night after Elimination Chamber. Brandon LeClaire will be hosting Wrestling Night in America. So join us live for that, or of course on demand on YouTube or on our podcast feed. But we're here to talk Dynamite, and you can join us in the chat room. You can also email us at wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. wadekellerpodcast@gmail.com. Let us know what you thought of the show. Ask questions, throw out some thoughts, rant if you want, compliment if you want. We monitor during the show, so if you want to write something longer than the chat accommodates, that's a good way to do that. And then finally, if you're a VIP member or Patreon supporter, you can be a live caller. The link to be a live caller is in my TV report at PWTorchVIP.com for our full VIP members, and also on the Patreon page if you are a PW Torch VIP supporter there. Dan Kuester is my guest co-host. Dan, good to have you back on the show. You're a PW Torch contributor, most often talking New Japan, but also in rotation here on Talking Dynamite with us. Good to have you back. I know it's been a long day.
Yeah. I mentioned to you, and may as well share with the audience, I had jury duty yesterday. We had a big work-related meeting today, so I've put in extra long hours this week. But happy to be on. I always enjoy the interactions with all the callers and chatters and some sharp folks. So it's always fun to be able to get back on here, and I do enjoy AEW and enjoy talking about it. So,
well, it's great to have you here. Let's continue talking Dynamite. And like I said, this was an interesting show just because I don't think you could really easily rearrange things and end up with the same product. There was a certain flow. I think there was a strategy to how they did it. It didn't feel overwhelming at any point. It felt well paced, but it also didn't feel like boring or too slowed down. And so, I mean, like I want to compliment this format. Standard Deviation brought it up. Also, Ramen Noodle wrote, Wade, I've missed a few weeks because of work. And I have to be honest, I like the way they caught me up on a few things tonight. I know I've given some pushback on how necessary I think recaps are. And so, yeah, you kind of live it and you get busy and then you realize, people who watch every week are like, oh, I already saw this Saturday. I remember this from last week. And I bet, no, let's find a good balance. It's not about overdoing it. Tonight didn't overdo it. But I think there is, I think they found, as Standard Deviation just put in the chat, their rapid fire recaps hit a sweet spot that I think works for the TikTok generation. The Jericho recap was about 20 seconds, but it served its function to catch up the viewer on what's up next and let them know what's up next. Dan, your thoughts on that?
Well, I'm going to change the subject slightly, and I have a feeling you may bring this up independently. But one thing I really liked, and it was a small thing, was after they did the intro, here's what's coming on, they had a different view of the announcers standing at ringside.
Yep.
And it looked really professional, and it just sports-like.
Yep.
Set a really good tone. Like and it was different. Like, I don't like watching a show where everything just feels rote and it's always the same. And I did feel like also, as some of the chatters mentioned, that they did a nice job of catching people up. When I first started watching wrestling, I loved learning who the different people were and trying to figure it out as I went a little bit. But those days are long gone. Like, if you're kind of a semi-viewer of AEW, you really don't want to turn it on and spend all this time trying to figure out what's going on, because you may throw your hands up at some point. So, yeah.
And I'll add too, I think the storylines are making more sense. I think it's easier to catch people up when it's not convoluted. It's not meta. It's coherent, not incoherent. It's more stripped down to the basics. We're not burning down people's houses. We're no scissors tonight. It's about wanting a title. Yeah.
The robe. I mean, the robe is
exactly.
It's got some gravitas to it.
Yep.
And it's all about presentation. You could have a really stupid storyline about a robe, but this is not it. I mean, it's like, it feels very important.
Yes. A couple of chat room comments, and we'll get into the specifics you're talking about. I'll talk about the announcers too. JC Scooby 1976 says, got a chance to watch AEW live for once, and it didn't keep me from clicking back and forth. I think he means that they held his interest, I think, right, JC? Clarify on that. It sounds like they didn't keep your attention, but I think you were saying the opposite. GWF ESPN says, ever since Jeff Jarrett disappeared and it was reported Tony Khan was getting, quote, more hands-on, I've enjoyed AEW more than WWE for the first time in a while. Kyle Fassel said, yeah, I need the reminders, even though I watch every week. And one of the things the reminders does is it tells you all the stuff you've watched. Let's help tell you what the most important, pertinent thing is. Like, I mean, it's just sort of, it's like why newspapers have headlines. Like, this is what this story's about, but it's in reverse. That story you read last week, here's a one-line summary. This is what's most important. Here's a couple sentences on it. So a lot of good things here. Some compliments too on the arena and the production. Kyle Fassel said they had a good movement all over the arena tonight. It felt fresh. So we'll get into that. So yes, you said the announcers. By the way, WWE's been doing this with Joe Tessitore on SmackDown, announcers standing at ringside. They're doing different settings. I have no problem with AEW copying them. I wish they were doing this sooner so it doesn't feel like they're being inspired by or copying. But the fact is all they're doing are things that sports has been doing forever. And frankly, I mean, you go back to the first Raw, it's Vince McMahon and Rob Bartlett standing at ringside. I mean, it's like, this is not reinventing the wheel or whatever. It's just what's done. And sometimes you get in a rut, you kind of do the same old thing and you don't think about innovating because you don't think it's important. But that fresh look can help. And it stood out to you enough to go, hey, let's not skip past this as we go through the show. And I did like it. And it did look professional. And it just, it's sort of like rearranging furniture in your house, or if you ever looked at your house in a mirror. Real estate agents say do this. If you're selling your house, look at your house in a mirror, because you see everything the way someone walking in your house for the first time is going to see it. Because it's sort of like you get nose blind to smells. Remember that commercial for the air spray? You get eye blind to your own clutter. And so you hold up a mirror and you're like, oh God, that's what it's going to look like for someone coming to my house for an open house. And then you want to declutter and clean it up. Sometimes you rearrange furniture. Back, I'm mixing analogies here, but you rearrange furniture just because it makes the house feel fresher. It's like, oh, this is kind of neat. I appreciate certain things in a different way now. And that's good to do. It keeps viewers, it allows viewers to kind of think the show feels fresh. And this did. And it's little things, but those things add up. There's a reason they're doing a lot of things they're already doing. It doesn't mean there aren't more they can do. But I liked it. And I thought the arena looked good. There's a compliment earlier in the chat about these smaller venues paying off because of the energy. Zach Barber was the one who said it. 4 weeks with hot crowds. Looks like that shift in venues is working swimmingly. And so, Dan, what do you think about the venues?
I definitely agree that the smaller venues have been a good step, as long as they can fill the buildings or come really close to it. Yeah. I would say I felt like this crowd was kind of hit and miss. Like, they started hot and they ended fairly hot. And I mean, that 6-man match, they were not really into.
Why would they be?
Well, that's a good counterpoint. But
and Copeland, that angle.
He's not. Yeah. So that is. Harley did pretty well with the crowd, and I thought that Orange and Takeshita got him, but it was a rough time there. I was going, and again, I'm tired. I've been doing all this stuff. I'm like, oh man, they're dragging here. This is becoming a bit of a slog, and so I'm glad it picked up toward the end.
Yes. So yeah, we had the announcer standing at ringside, and then they showed MJF lying on a treatment table. It turned out to be a tattoo bench or whatever, and he was getting they didn't explain it, I don't think, but he got an AEW tattoo when he came back, and now it showed it, I guess, being removed. They didn't really but I think that's okay, because the people that were watched the pay-per-view, that's when he gave that big interview and he showed that tattoo. It's okay for occasionally for people to be like, well, what was that tattoo he got removed? Maybe they look it up, maybe, because it's not like you're totally out of the story if you don't understand what the tattoo is got removed. So totally I was okay with that. Yeah. It wouldn't have been a bad thing if the announcers had said, oh, MJF is having his AEW tattoo removed. And Tony Schiavone, of course, nobody ever believed that was even a permanent tattoo. Nobody thought that. He's all about MJF. He's always been about MJF. They could have emphasized it, but yeah, no big deal. Point made. So then Hangman Page arrives in a gorgeous Rivian R1T EV pickup truck with a horn on the front. I've been waiting for one of those to show up on TV after these hideous cyber trucks have made their appearances. And he got out and walked into the arena to his entrance.
What is that truck, Wade? I wasn't sold on the truck, but if you look at, I'm not with the cool kids, so I wondered if that was a positive or negative, to be honest.
It's the coolest looking car ever made, or truck ever made. It's a US based EV startup that's going to take over Tesla. And it goes 0 to 60 in 2.5 seconds. It's faster than it's as fast as any standard car that you can buy, because of the quad motor. Like, I've watched YouTube videos on it. It's got there's a guy, the #1 YouTube car reviewer, who ranks every single car, every single price point, gave it the highest score of any vehicle he's ever driven of any kind. Okay. So it's a
I don't mean to sound blasphemous. I wasn't sure it wasn't a Cybertruck. I don't know enough.
Now you've lost all credibility, because there's.
I didn't claim to have any. I don't like this. I like the look of it. I was like, well, this isn't quite as ugly as a Cybertruck, but is it a? I don't. Are they a new Cybertruck? What is it? I didn't know.
Look him up.
Okay,
it's a handsome. It's super. It's meant, like, they're all over Colorado, because it's like a outdoor car. It's built like a Jeep in terms of off-road. It goes as fast as any sports car that you can find on a showroom floor. And it's also essentially a minivan, because they have an SUV version too. So it can be a everyday people hauler. It's kind of all three in one. Great in Minnesota winters and Colorado winters, because of it's amazing. All right. So now people are listening what car they have in the chat room. One guy says this country ain't ready for EV. I don't know what that means. They're all over the place.
I mean, it depends on your
Where you live.
infrastructure right
Yeah,
now.
absolutely.
We don't see a lot of them around here. But
No, this country is a broad statement. It is getting better, but I mean in just the last 3 years, the number of EV chargers in my area is.
The guy that posted it did have a Nebraska logo there, so there you go.
Yeah, exactly. No, totally. I mean, in California, I mean, what did I see? There's a YouTube video of somebody on a street of California. It was like every third car was a Tesla. Like in California, it was just in just a regular neighborhood. Like it was crazy. So yeah, EVs are growing. Obviously.
I went hybrid for my new car, so I'm, we're getting there.
Yeah.
And it's been really good. Sorry. Okay. Yeah.
No, all right. But Hangman's a cool guy to be the first one to drive.
Yeah.
I
mean, he has credibility with me, and that's why I wondered what it was.
Yes. All right. So let's hear Hangman Page, Aaron Solo, quick squash by Hangman after he charges into the building. The Excalibur had said he wasn't. They hadn't seen him all day, but he was scheduled to be there, and he just showed up just in time for the bell to ring for his match. Aaron Solo. It was a little bit weird. I'll say this. There's a few. I don't know what the best phrase is. There's a phrase in like fiction writing of not to have the incredibly unlikely coincidences happen. Like there are too many of those on this show. One of them is, why is Aaron Solo in the ring if they didn't know where Hangman was until he sped up in the car and ran to the ring? Like, what was Aaron Solo doing in the ring if the Hangman, who they hadn't seen all day, hadn't shown up? That was kind of dumb. Claudio hanging out backstage looking for Copeland, and they're just randomly showing him, and then that's the moment Copeland happens to attack him. Oh, how convenient. There might have been a couple other things like that. So anyway, so I thought that was a little contrivance. That's it. There's contrivances on the show that I think could have easily been worked away out. All Excalibur had to say is we've been waiting all day for Hangman to show up. We got word 5 minutes ago he's on his way to the building. His opponent, Aaron Solo, scheduled to wrestle him in the opening match. Here he is. Like, why overstate? We don't know where he is until he drives up. Just go, he's been missing all day, but he's about to drive up, and he's on time for his match. He won't get a fee for being late, but he's just in time. All right. So then he cuts his promo. He sits in the ring and says, MJF, I'm going to stay here until I see you. MJF walks out, and they cut a promo, and MJF just said, I'm not going to wrestle you until the pay-per-view. And he revealed that he beat up Christopher Daniels and bloodied him backstage. So what do you think of the Hangman MJF back and forth?
I mean, the actual dialogue and stuff was good, very good. Kind of odd that Hangman goes back to find Christopher Daniels and nobody, I mean, I don't see a lot of bloody people laying around my job with no one paying any attention to them. But, I mean, if you can get past that, I think everything was pretty good and continues to build interest in those two guys going at it. So I would give it a thumbs up. But I just thought, I mean, does Hangman have to be the first one to find? It would have been better for me if somebody was trying to tend to Christopher Daniels when Hangman found him. And I know we're nitpicking a lot.
But you know what? All this stuff adds up. I mean, it's just that, like, if it weren't easy to fix, I wouldn't harp on it. There's certain things you can't fix because it's just, you can't. Like, there's no way. These are stuff that's just kind of easy to clean up a little bit. And that's the thing. It just all makes for a more immersive experience.
Yeah, and he already had the blood on his shirt. So you could have the blood on his shirt while somebody's already patching him up, and then Hangman's like, hey, we got to get him somewhere. We got to make sure he's okay. But instead, he walks back there, and the guy's just gushing blood. I'm like, okay, well, he's been gushing blood for a while, but there you go.
Yep. So as far as we haven't talked since Hangman and MJF, I think, got on track. I think both of them are more on track right now. Like, I don't want to like harp on it because it's not the end of the world, but like when MJF yells and overmodulates, but like he's so much more effective when he's not like thinking he has to just do this hack promo technique that Dolph Ziggler built his whole like promo career on, which is yelling at the top of your lungs to get people's attention. And even if you didn't overmodulate the microphone, it's so unnecessary for someone as talented as him. You want to pick your spots. This was this calm, cool, collected, cocky, easily unlikable MJF, and and again, there's a time for everything, but he did that too much. This was a really like good MJF performance. I think he's been good the last few weeks. I think Hangman is back on track. Zach Barber in his AEW Feud Tracker reports and in our chat also has been making the case that for Hangman has been on this journey define himself. He was never a heel. He was just a babyface. He was kind of losing his shit, so to speak. And now we're watching him kind of regain his footing. I think an ode to that, a hint of that.
Okay.
Yeah, but no. Well, you tell me what word I should. When he went to Swerve's locker room and Renee caught him and said, "What are you doing here?" And he's like, "Oh, don't talk to me about it." Like he didn't want to admit it, but it looked like he was trying to make peace. Maybe they never really followed up on it, but it was a way of telling the audience he's trying to make amends, and he's been on this journey. So, your opinion on MJF and Hangman?
Wade, what I hadn't thought about, and I don't recall what person in the chat brought this up. And I don't mean to sound negative about anybody, but I'm just going to tell it what I see it.
Yeah.
They took Jeff Jarrett off this show, and MJF has been 5 times better since then. Hangman is building off of them. They're both being really focused, and maybe they're just doing it till after the pay-per-view, and then they're going to kill some TV time with Jeff Jarrett. I'd say drop it. I'd say clearly I'm not missing it. I forgot it ever existed. And I don't think it was that compelling for anybody. And putting the stars against the stars, and they're interacting just with the other stars for the most part, with some ancillary stuff on the side occasionally, I think that makes a lot more sense, and it makes for a lot better product.
Yes. Okay. So in terms of where this feud goes and where they land, I've been talking about, like, should Hangman be the top babyface? He's getting the best responses right now. I would argue better than Kenny and Will Ospreay, but they're getting good responses. This is not taking a dig at them, but there's something about Hangman right now. But they just, and we're gonna, well, we can talk about it now. They revved up Swerve. Swerve versus Ricochet is set up. Winner gets a shot at the world title. Is Swerve the right person to take the title from Moxley? Because we've been wondering, a lot of people have been talking about that on my podcast. Like, who is the right person? It's not Copeland, but who and when? Or do you want it to be Kenny? Because, you got to be in the Kenny business with, he's gone for over a year. Now he's back. He's, he's a founding co-founder, EVP, but also the guy who came in with all the momentum. He's had injury setbacks, whatever. Maybe you just make it about him. So then to Swerve lose to him. But to me, I look around and I'm like, what do you do with Hangman? Like, does maybe he shouldn't be world champion. Maybe you want him involved in passionate feuds and you wait till 2026 to start thinking world title with him again. But there is a sense for a character that was out there and lost and over the top, burning down houses and all that nonsense that just doesn't pay off and you can't really follow up on and own and make sense of in the universe of AEW. Now he's over in that organic way of people just liking him. So yeah, what do you think about the place of Hangman relative to, say, Swerve and Kenny in terms of who the top babyface should be, and Will Ospreay too, of course?
Sure. And I think it's just somewhat relief from fans that really like Hangman that he's doing things that are logical and reasonable, and they don't make you question why you're suspending your disbelief. Mm-hmm. So that alone, I really like. I don't mean to cop out. I think you've given a lot of good options here. For me, given everything I know, what I know, and I watched that Tokyo Dome show, I'm going to be in the Kenny Omega business first and foremost. And part of it is because the opportunity cost of not doing so is higher than with those other guys, because you just don't know. Kenny may be another 10, 20-year guy, but maybe 2 or 3. And so I'm going to strike while the iron's hot. I'm going to take advantage of that. I'm going to hopefully have a little bit, better tie-in with New Japan. I really like, Gabe Kidd was on Saturday night, and that was cool, right? I mean, so that's another reason to watch Collision. And they've got Clark Connors coming in. That may not do as much for some of the fans as it does for me, but that's another compelling reason to watch Collision or keep track of all the shows. But, if somebody wants to come in and argue for Swerve, I was kind of caught off guard by that announcement. And it does. It also helps justify Prince Nana's, existence and keeps him as a good character, which I think he's done excellent work. And, if they want to run with Swerve, kind of go backward and then eventually build to him getting some revenge on Bobby Lashley, which I think eventually he has to do, that it's not a bad pathway either. But if out of several good choices, mine is Kenny Omega, period, right now.
Yep. And I mean, the case is it's not now or never, but it might be now or never. I mean, yeah. And so just in the sense of he was gone for a while, now he's back. And I do think Hangman can stay relevant in other ways without the title too. So, kind of a lot of things at play there. Okay. So as we march through the show here, they showed Don Callis in the luxury suite. And I like this. I mean, this is a way I've said they got to get in the Don Callis business. Like focus on a handful of people who are key going into a pay-per-view. And like, I argue Don Callis is really good, but is overrated because he isn't consistently given the TV time and the storylines, nor is he performing when given the opportunity at the level of praise that some people give him as this like top tier manager. But I think he has it in him. But let's praise him when he actually delivers consistently. And this was one of the best uses of Don Callis I've seen on a week when he isn't just like doing a center ring promo where it's just like, okay, this segment's all about him. I thought the luxury suite, the commentary, the sunglasses stuff was a little cheesy. Another contrivance was Orange Cassidy having a second set of sunglasses. Does he always do that, or did he know Takeshi was going to break one of his pairs? It's like a little too cute, and it takes you out of the moment. But this was a good week for Callis, and I like the idea of them looking from the luxury suite, and because we then did move into the Will Ospreay Brian Keith match, and that turned out to be a way to promote Ospreay and the feud with the Don Callis family and the Kyle Fletcher match at the pay-per-view in a way that was very visual. It's very obvious, but it was the backdrop to a match that they set up beforehand well. And this is why I like this show. Renee interviewing Chris Jericho after a good recap of Jericho's win over Bandito. Jericho responded to what happened, his title defense on Collision, and then he explained with Don Callis walking in that why his guy Brian Keith was collecting the bounty, and Jericho vouched for him and said, "Trust me, Don, Brian Keith's your man." And Callis said that's all he needed to hear from him. And I enjoyed the little interplay with Jericho sneering at Renee over her attitude and body language and stuff to him earlier. So this was just a good, well-constructed, well-executed promo that set the stage for a TV match that was just there to help facilitate promoting the pay-per-view match, but it had a backstory to it. It didn't feel random. So again, I think this was good, solid booking, like just like paint by numbers. But that to me, I'll shut up in a sec. The best pro wrestling is, to me, paint by numbers, not trying to reinvent stuff, but using if you hire good wrestlers who are talented at what they do and you know who they are and they connect with the audience in the way that you intend, drop them into the paint by numbers, drop them into the formula, because it's about the wrestlers. It's not about the booker reinventing things. It's not about hot shotting. It's not about social media, but it's about dropping wrestlers that fans are invested in into classic pro wrestling situations. And that's what this show largely was, and that's what happened here, Dan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just, even though it was later in the show, I just don't want to forget this, because normally this kind of stuff I don't care for at all. But Don's reaction to Bryce Remsburg shoving him, I about lost it. I mean, it was believable, but it was just fantastic. I'm just like, it was Bobby Heenan-esque. I mean, he was acting like he was going to do something about it, but he's really a coward. And I don't know. I just about lost it at that. I really, really enjoyed it. The stuff with Jericho I thought was really good. Another thing where they told you enough to know how it relates to the story if you just are watching it on a certain level, but also at the same time, if you know their history, you got a little bit more out of it, and that's the best kind of storytelling. So I liked pretty much everything about Don Callis and Fletcher too. I mean, Fletcher keeps doing a better job of presenting himself as a star. Takeshita as well. I mean, it's all quite good. The big guys, whatever they call the Lance Archer, Brian Cage team,
the Murder Machines, maybe a less great night for them. Yeah. But generally it was a good night for the folks associated with Callis and Jericho. I mean, Brian Keith was fine. So yeah. Yeah.
By the way, Zach Barber harkening back host, don't you occasionally walk down the hall and see one of your fellow professors in a bloody heap, Dan? And then Ryan Solorio says, yeah, it was weird. No one came to him until Hangman called someone. So yeah, and then even later when Adam Copeland was getting beat up, it's like we're just there. Why does it take so long for someone else? And why is it only people in the storyline who get to make the save? So yeah, I mean, again, there's stuff to clean up. And Zach Barber wants to give credit. You forgot to mention the bloody towel, Wade. That was a key point. The foreshadowing of what did MJF do? Now we'll find out.
Which again, the bloody towel showed up 5 minutes before anybody. That's what made it so bad about Christopher Daniels. Yep. It's like you knew it was coming, and then
it should have been somewhere else, like under a staircase. Like like in a back hall somewhere where like show someone frantically running around going, where's Chris? Where is CD? Where is CD? We can't find him. And someone goes, oh, I hear a noise over here. Like, again, these are the little details, a connective tissue that just makes it feel more believable and less just kind of thrown together. You want that attention to detail. I mean, if you're reading a mystery novel, watching a thriller movie, whatever, you want to feel like it got a few eyes looking at it going, let's clean this up. Let's tie. It just makes for a better experience. Not the end of the world that they didn't do that, but it is sort of, I mean, a non-wrestling fan who isn't used to this and isn't like a knee-jerk defender of everything pro wrestling, because how dare you? And like a non-pro viewer is going to look at that and just roll their eyes and go, how do you watch this? That's so fake. Like, wrestlers work so hard to make their moves look real. Can the producers of the show work a little harder to make the stuff they do make sense? I mean, wrestlers put their bodies on the line and work very hard to make the moves they look good. The moves they do look good. Let's clean up the production too. Some of that detail work. Although wrestlers are part of it too. I mean, they work hard about the ring stuff, and a lot of times they don't work hard to make other stuff realistic, like Orange Cassidy with the sunglasses thing. It just kind of stupid. Why? Do you always wrestle with the spare sunglasses? Oh, you just planned that spot, and that was a ha-ha moment. And it took me out of the match because it made it seem like we're here to tell jokes instead of fight for a title. Okay, so Will Ospreay, Brian Keith. Any thoughts on, like, Will Ospreay took 11 minutes to beat Brian Keith. Greg Parks and I talked on the flagship last night, Wade Keller Pro Wrestling Podcast flagship, our blue logo show, that we did over-unders on how long the match would last. I said 13 minutes. Greg said 10. It was right in between. We're pretty close. Should it take that long for Will Ospreay to beat Brian Keith? I thought it was fine.
I didn't like him kicking out of the Oz cutter. That's the thing I didn't like. I think the timing was okay, but this guy is you've got a few number one guys, but he's in the number 1A conversation for sure. Mm-hmm. And, I know they're trying, you don't have to build everybody all the time. I mean, just the fact they could have done a similar match, but that part, I didn't like it. That part, that to me was a little bit too much.
But overall, presentation, Brian Keith collecting a bounty. He's a bounty hunter. Cal is paying to try to weaken Ospreay. The announcer said beforehand, maybe Brian Keith's not looking to win. Maybe he's looking to maim or cripple or just, weaken Will Ospreay going into AEW Revolution. Didn't really get a chance to do that. It was just a competitive match, but it was a good match. Keith's a good wrestler, and Ospreay obviously is an Ospreay. So it's good. So then we got the clip of Mariah May and attacking Tony Storm on Collision. They didn't overdo the recap, but you got an idea that you missed out on something if you didn't watch, which is what they got to do. Here's what happened. But we're not going to just replay the whole thing for you. So check your DVR, go watch online, start watching us on Saturday. The announcers reacted to it, and Excalibur said Tony Storm would not be here tonight because she's awaiting medical evaluation before she can travel again. Then last week, we talked about Momo Watanabe and whether fans would be invested in her. And so we get a backstage segment of Stardom footage of her winning, earning the right to a title match, and then choosing a match with Mercedes. And then they showed Mercedes backstage, and then Billy Starks walked in, unidentified at first. Another contrivance. When do wrestlers ever just walk into a live interview? That's incredibly unprofessional. It's rarely done, and it only happens when there's an angle. So I thought that was dumb. Like,
Road Warrior Hawk did it once, and there's a famous blooper, a WWE one, but
it's a blooper. And so I'll give an example of how easy it is to clean it up. Mercedes in the middle of her promo, she's like, at AEW Revolution, I'm going to be champion. Who's that? Why? Why are you standing so close to me? This is my promo time. Who is this? Who is this woman?
Yeah.
Billy comes into the picture. Super easy to fix. Like, this is not hard stuff. That's the part that frustrates me, is all this, little straighten your tie stuff. It's so easy to fix. In every instance is backstage stuff. And it just feels like, and the reason I'm kind of sensitive to it too, not only because I think it hurts the product and the immersive experience, but I feel it's a product of looking down at the fans. I really think they think the fans won't care about that stuff, that they're not sophisticated enough to care. It's detail work. It's nitpicky. And I do think it's looking down at the fans. I think if they respected the audience more, they would have more attention to detail. And I think they think our fans aren't smart enough to notice these contrivances. And I think it limits the audience. And it's okay if you don't care about that stuff. I'm just, my perspective analyzing the business is what will help it grow and what will make the product better. It's not to shame you if you like something I think is sloppy or not good for drawing money. I teach their own in that respect. But WWE and AEW and TNA, everybody that could be better about this stuff.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
So what do you think of segment with Watanabe?
I mean, the video package was okay. It's not a hit, Wade. I mean, it's just there, and I know she's a good wrestler. I do. I mean, I watched the match. Although that match in New Japan was kind of rushed, the one that she won to get the shot. I watched that. That was on the Tokyo Dome, I think, like in the pre-show, and I watched that live. I even want to say, but you go back to whether it was the right move not to put Harley Cameron over in Australia. And I think that a rematch would have more intrigue than this. But they had a plan and they're sticking with it. And it's not doing that much for me. And again, I think it will be a really good match. I don't really doubt that. But
yeah. So a couple of things. One, speaking of contrivances, SF Niners fan 23 says she happened to drop the TBS belt of all belts. All right. Yes, that is one of them. This is another one thing I didn't like, and I noticed. Kyle Fassel says Billy was drinking water out of a coffee cup too. It was a disposable coffee cup with a lid on it. Like, oh, it's hot, I need a lid. And it was water. Like, what? This is Watanabe. I'm getting my pronunciation corrected from Zach. In my spelling of it, I do this as an excuse. I wish I was better about it. When I learn to spell names, in my head say them phonetically enough so I get the spelling right. But then when I actually have to say them, I say it in the phonetic way that helps me spell them correctly. And so with some of the Japanese names, that's kind of why I have these like bad habits when I say things wrong. But anyway, so people pointing that out. So then Zach Barber said, I chuckled at Momo coming in armed with a bat. Barry Wood says, Wade's idea is good for Mercedes and Billy Starks, but his acting is as bad as Mercedes. That's why they don't do that. I wasn't trying to act good. I'm not saying if I was trying, it'd be great. That's not my profession. But I will say Mercedes' profession is acting in front of a camera, and she's done it for 10 plus years. And I think you can get a take that looks good. I don't think what they did required any less acting. It just didn't make logical sense. What I did didn't require any extra acting. I am David Bryant, the author of AEW Collision Hits and Misses. Says also, don't finish a sketch by smiling, freezing in place, and staring at the camera. No human does that. David's been making an argument. AEW and WWE should hire professional like producers and directors who've worked in TV and theater and really shore up the acting and the stagecraft of backstage segments. I remember after the original XFL press conference, when they introduced Jesse Ventura as their color commentator, and I talked to Vince McMahon for a while after the press conference, to the point where his people were like trying to pull him away from me because he was like gabbing with me too much. And I remember he was lamenting the acting ability of wrestlers at that stage. So put yourself when the XFL was launching and wrestling was changing into asking a lot more of the wrestlers. And Vince was just like, Wade, yeah, I'm asking, these wrestlers trained to wrestle and cut promos, but acting isn't their thing. And it's tough. And it's something we need to adjust to. But now you know what's going to be asked of you. And, acting, some wrestlers go take acting classes to get better. But I like the idea of bringing in some professional people who aren't wrestling people, just going, this won't make TV in any other genre. Let's clean this up and work with them. Dan?
No, I think that's fine. My personal preference is the New Japan presentation where you just have, and it's hard to replicate on a weekly TV show, but I do wish they would do more, not these kind of bizarro press conferences that they do, but in-character press conferences after their matches. And at New Japan, you have almost, the other matches are going on when they do it. I mean, they'll do it live. And there's a lot of great content that comes out of that, because if you're a really good wrestler, you should still be in the moment and believe what you just did in terms of your character. And I prefer that type of approach myself. So that's not really arguing, but that's just a different way of doing it.
Yep. All right. So yeah, I don't know that there's a lot AEW can do to get people to care about Momo going into that match, but the positive is, and it's part of AEW's brand, is we are an international company. We're not just a self-contained American-based company, and we have a bit of an open door policy. Although NXT is giving them a run for their money with all these TNA, interpromotional matches. X-Title defended last night on NXT on the CW, but they want to give the idea that we're an American-based company that recognizes Stardom and New Japan and all these other international companies. They're talking about European independents too. So it adds a little prestige, I guess, to the title. It's not a key match for the pay-per-view. They're going to sell it in other ways, and so they do like to drop in a little international credibility boost here and there. And so it has a positive. And last week we talked. Well, they didn't do much to explain. I mean, they said Momo won this tournament and set the stage for why she got the title match. But how do you get people to care about her? I just don't know that you can. It's almost baked into deciding to do this match, Dan.
Yeah, and they're doing enough to make it seem like it's a reasonably big deal, and they probably don't need to do any more. This is the bed they've made. Just go with it, I suppose. That's fine.
Yeah. All right, so then we had the clunky Outrunners versus Murder Machines match with tag team title contention on the line. When Outrunners won in 9 minutes, an upset win. This stupid thing where the entrance music plays and a wrestler comes out and then on the stage, and then a wrestler who's about to do a finishing move decides to stop in their tracks and not do it. Lance Archer did it. He froze, he dropped Floyd, and then Floyd rolled up a distracted Archer for a 3 count. It's a trope. It's tired. It was stupid to begin with. It makes wrestlers who are supposed to be these murder monsters look like idiots. And everybody does it. It's not just Archer
terrible.
And it's not just AEW. But come on, there's got to be a better way to tell your stories than this, Dan.
I'm afraid Todd Martin's going to watch this and be disappointed in me for not getting enough outrage. Because he does a great job of just talking about how colossally stupid these things are, and it is. But it's been a long couple of days, and I'm tired, and I can't get the outrage. But it was bad, and it doesn't protect Lance Archer to make him look like a fool like that.
Yep, exactly. Yes.
This idea that somehow, we're protecting them because they shouldn't lose. That's not the way to go about it. I mean, you could do roll up finishes, I suppose, and his partner somehow distracts him or something, but that just makes him look like a complete child in terms of mentality and ability to wrestle and intelligence. So, and I'll say this too, the stuff they did with the University of Nebraska Omaha team was awesome. And the Sports Center stuff was awesome. And somehow, some people say I'm too hard on Excalibur. I didn't like the way he presented it. I just thought, I can't even put my finger on it, Wade, but I was like, first of all, I felt like they should have brought it up immediately open to the show. Once they brought up the match and say, as featured on Sports Center, that's a 20-second clip. Show it twice. They were hilarious in that. And it's like, okay, maybe you don't want your wrestlers to be hilarious, then you shouldn't hire these guys. If you're going to be in the Outrunners business, then go ahead and be in the Outrunners business. And what they do for that audience is very entertaining. And I understand people may not like it, but you don't. It's not better to just kind of downplay it. If you're going to do it, do it. And they ignored it at the beginning of the show, and then when he introduced it, it felt contrived. And then the only part that didn't feel contrived is when he said Taz called him at 1 a.m. to tell him about it. Because Taz probably did see it and think it was cool.
Yeah.
So I thought they didn't get enough out of that.
Do people still watch SportsCenter, or is everyone just watching clips online? Is that a generational thing? I think it's less important than it used to be, but it's still. I don't agree with you. If you're going to do it, if you're going to push the Outrunners, and you're going to do a SportsCenter moment, make it feel important.
Yeah. To be fair, I saw it on Twitter, so you're probably. But I don't watch SportsCenter. But now, if it was a Scott Van Pelt show, people still watch that to some degree. But I think it was just the random weekend SportsCenter that probably has an audience of a couple 100,000 people or 100,000 people, if that. But yeah, so.
Kyle Fassel notes the biggest heel of the night was a guy who plays the entrance music. And that's another thing. It's not a contrivance, but it just makes no sense. In the middle of the match, somebody in AEW pushed a button to play Hurt Syndicate's music in the middle of a match. You should play music after matches, but during a match, you can't have the company as co-conspirators and try to screw around. I mean, there were stakes in this match, and the company's like, oh, wrestlers are coming out to the ring who aren't part of the match. We better play their music. It's like, it's not to take Archer's character off the hook for being distracted by it, but that just shouldn't, it doesn't make any sense. Like, just run everything through that doesn't make sense filter before you air it. And honestly, like, have a does this make sense filter and think fresh about everything. Just because you have a habit of doing it, and we're just showing up, the producers and showing up to their job, going through the motions, collecting their paycheck, can't wait till they can go have drinks afterwards, whatever their routine is. It's Tony Khan's job or the people he hires to care enough to run things through the does this make sense filter. And it's, I've been harping on, pin breakups a lot of, where like wrestler just like hits someone on the back. The cover's still there, the shoulders are still down, and the ref stops because some third person entered and hit somebody on the back. It looked dumb. It got sloppy over the decades. WWE's cleaned it up. Like, and like the breakups now are what I wanted. Like, they're fierce, they're hard hitting, and they're believable. And so it makes it just like, it's clearly better and was always there to be done. It's easy to do. And so that's an example. You clean all this stuff up and it's a better product. And so let's figure out a better way to distract people or
and again,
do finish.
Wade, we're figuring, I mean, this takes me 10 seconds.
Yep.
Play the music. I wouldn't do this. Don't get me wrong.
I know what you're saying.
Okay. You play the music. Bobby Lashley and Sheldon come out. They go back to the back where MVP is like shoving the producer guy that play. He doesn't have to be out there with them. He could be the guy that made him play the music because they did. Clearly, the story is they wanted to distract the murder machines.
Yep.
So, okay, those two guys come out and MVP is back there forcing the producer to play the music. This is not hard. This is not, I mean, we seem to get on some of these rants every time I do this show. And that is an indictment on AEW, which I generally enjoy.
Yep.
And it's like, I mean, it took me 5 seconds to think of that. Like, if you're producing the show and you got all day, get somebody to, to do it. I mean,
Ramen Noodle with a very weak but nice try defense. If the Hurt Business music hit in Wade's house and Lashley walked in the studio, he'd freeze too. Yes, that'd be breaking into my house, and I'm not on the verge of winning a match. But I got to tell you, if I was doing something very, very important, like trying to the equivalent in my occupation of winning a match that could earn me a tag team title shot, and I saw Lashley across the street, like park his car, and all I had was 8 more seconds to complete my task, and I would win whatever I was trying to win or accomplish what I was trying to accomplish. It was very important for me. I'd finish what I was doing for 8 seconds.
You're in Waterloo and you're interviewing Sergeant Slaughter, and you're sitting at the table, and they play that music in the background. You might look up, but you're going to keep doing your job.
Yeah, and there isn't an imminent threat. Like, this is Lashley didn't show up like run into the ring or show up with like. There's no imminent threat. He's a long way away. Ramen, stop excusing this crap. Seriously, if you want AEW to grow and you want to defend them, don't defend obvious crap. And it's WWE doing it too. So this is not. It's not a brand loyalty thing too. Standard Deviation says, I think AEW would be better if everyone spent more time together during the week to brainstorm and pick apart each other's segments. Like if I'm if my job was a trapeze artist to catch somebody and then some like nemesis of mine showed up in the crowd, I'm not gonna like just let the person drop and die. I'm gonna be like, oh, they're in the crowd. Okay, well, let me catch this person. They're way up there in the mezzanine. I'm fine. I'm gonna finish my job. It's in the so let's not even.
And again,
Ramen Noodle says, Ramen Noodle says it was a joke. Holy cow.
Okay. All right.
Well, Ramen, with your track record, sometimes you come in like hard on our criticism, acting like we're nitpicking when what we're trying to do is genuinely help the product. But
I mean, you brought it up earlier though, Wade. It's like it shouldn't just be the enemies saving or the buddies saving their buddy. I mean, Mid-South Wrestling is my favorite show in the history of watching this stuff. And it was always, it usually would start out with the losers, but then all the good guys would come in and help the other good guys. Like it was never, oh, this isn't my feud, so I'm going to, or they made a reason like, okay, this guy went and helped the the children's home and he's no longer in the building or something. Otherwise,
Yep.
the good guys came and helped the good guys.
Yes. I'm sorry, Ramen Noodle Fight came on to. He's like, it went right over your head. He's like, it's a joke. My goodness. If it was a joke, I didn't get it. And part of it is is a little bit of history, with you running in defending AEW. But I apologize. I probably did. I take you at your word that was totally a joke because it was so absurd. I should have known better. You're smarter. You're smarter than to make that actual argument. But people make that kind of defensive AEW sloppiness sometimes. So, all right, deep breath. By the way, this match was. I know the Outrunners are kind of cult heroes, but my God, they're bad in the ring. Like tonight, they were. And I gotta say, Arthur and Cage were sloppy. This was not a good chemistry.
They were exposed. I didn't realize that was there. And again, you can still have them on the show at a certain level, but you need to be aware of limitations.
And
that was not good.
And they were just like bad. Like Archer just stood around, like waiting for something to happen.
There was a lot of dead spots in that match. And things looked
forearms were weak looking, and the timing of shoving whatever the spot was, knocking Archer out of the ring, whatever it was. It's just like, oh no, Truth jumped Cage as he set up a power bomb, and then Cage and Magnum tumbled to the floor. There's like all kinds of spots where just it looked like this like half-speed dry run with guys who are trying to learn to wrestle, and there's a panel of people critiquing their moves. Like it didn't look like it was ready for live TV. So yeah. Ramen Noodle says, I'm sure you'll get a legit reason to crash out on me before the night is over. Probably. Yeah. All right. And he says, no peace, no harm, or peace, no harm, no foul. All right. We're all good. The grudge match, the unsanctioned grudge match after the post show was off. Kyle Fassel does add the Outrunners didn't look good work-wise. Okay, so then we had a video package on Moxley and Copeland. It was good. It was brief, but it made it feel like important because they bothered to do a video package. And then we had the line from Claudia, which I liked, which is, "You're not hunting us. Now it's me hunting you," which laid the groundwork for what came later. And so then we go to some clips of Ricochet last week. Then Swerve came out to respond to the Nana exchange with Ricochet. And this is where Ricochet kind of said, Nana's saying I should go after the world title again and be focused on that. And I want to be. And Nana revealed, I got a title match. It's Ricochet against Swerve. Winner gets an AEW world title match. It doesn't mean it's at the exclusion of other more deserving people, but it's a bit of a stretch in the kind of canon narrative of Ricochet for him to be one win away from a world title match. But it's a high-stakes match. And Dan, what do you think of the setup? And what do you think's going on with Nana saying, if you don't win, I don't know. I don't know if I can do this anymore. Is this teasing a heel turn? Maybe Nana goes to Ricochet. They're telling a story there because Nana's a heel manager with Ricochet would feel like blasphemous for people who know Nana's history and Ricochet stealing the robe and all that. I don't know that I'm going to buy it if that's the direction they're going, but I can't help but imagine that as one of the possibilities of what they're planting seeds for.
I mean, I prefer the tough love scenario. And that Swerve comes through, but that's certainly a possibility. Everything that was presented really well. Like I thought this was a really good segment on everybody's part, and I think we brought that up earlier. So, I don't know where it's going. I would, I don't see a need for a breakup here. I think they're a really good tandem.
I was skeptical of Prince Nana as a babyface manager. It felt like, well, he's just going to be an unneeded appendage, and it's actually worked out well. I think there's an affection for him, and I wouldn't be in any rush to break up the act. I think it's just where it's at. So hopefully that's not what they're doing. Yep. David Bryant says in the chat, I like Nana a lot better when he's being serious.
Yep. I
do too. I think there's a time to be playful and joyful and all of that, but I like him when he's more serious too, instead of just because he came across like, this is what I do, and I have put no thought into it. It's just my music, Swerve's music hits. I come out, I do the silly dance, people go nuts. But there's no growth, there was no depth. There's some depth here. The robe storyline has brought it out. I'm with David on this one. So yeah, any quick thoughts on that? Okay.
I mean, I think it's just been a gradual thing all through the Danielson stuff, through the Moxley stuff. They've grown together, and when Nana first came in with Swerve, I was a little more. I never disliked it, but I was a little more indifferent toward it. And now I think they help each other. And so I would just agree. I hope this is there's no reason to break this group up for sure.
Have they done a good enough job explaining the robe, or is it just baked into the context? Do you need to know the whole story and have it recap for you? They've done enough since the initial incident, I think, for Nana to say that means a lot, and there's a big history with it, and everybody is treating it like a big deal. Because Barry Wood says, I've been watching wrestling for 30 years. Ain't never heard of that robe till last week. And then King of Strong Style goes, yeah, I don't get the whole robe thing at all. Do they need to make it more explicit and maybe just Excalibur going, that robe has been, whatever, I don't just.
I feel like they've been doing that. Either Excalibur or there was maybe a package, I want to say, on Collision. Nana himself told Swerve that. If you didn't see the back and forth, I think it was also on Collision, maybe, when Nana approached Swerve and asked him to give the robe back. Obviously he knew he wasn't going to do it, but it was presented really nicely and really seriously. So, I think it's good. I don't think I think if they showed a little bit of a video history of it, but I think you can overdo that and there's diminishing returns, honestly.
I think they've just made it like, this is the difference for me. If they did it initially and expected everyone to react and didn't follow up, I'd be like, well, they're playing to a very small audience and they ought to explain it before they expect a payoff. But the fact is when they first did it, there wasn't enough context. Since then, they've given it context. And because they've invested time in it, now there is enough context that I feel like everyone should be caught up enough if you're watching the product. I don't think you just totally give up on, Excalibur. You can still have someone, just say, yeah, that history with that robe and Nana is really important. Just at some point, you can't re-explain it every time. So now they've done enough to just tell you it's important. If you don't know why, that's not essential as long as everyone's acting that way. Ramen Noodle said, it's not his robe, number one. And number two, he looks like a jackass wearing it. What more do you need? And there is a sense, as long as it's an ongoing storyline and they're paying reverence to the robe and it's clearly important to Nana and Ricochet is being a jerk for having commandeered it and wearing it, I'm fine with where they are with it too.
Yeah.
But others, you say, they've done enough. Kyle Fassel said, I'd still like more robe context. And King of Strong Style says, yeah, I don't get the robe thing at all. So, maybe that's just AEW thinks they did enough. Maybe the chat room is anecdotally indicative of maybe a little bit more, just every once in a while, kind of keep adding a little context, or even it can even be expository where Ricochet can say, I know what this robe means to you because of this, or Swerve can go, Nana, that I know because of this, that robe means so much to you. Like, you just kind of bake it in the flow of conversation to just kind of remind people. So Dan, we haven't talked since Ricochet's really getting a character. King of Strong Style says, I'm happy Ricochet's getting TV time. Glad to see there are stakes in the match, but I can't take him seriously. This feels mid-card, not main event. GWF ESPN 1992 says Ricochet is doing the best work of his career. Where are you on that?
He's great. He's very obnoxious. He's very annoying. He's very unlikable. But he's also a pretty consistent character. Like, I thought he was going all cheap heat and going to have an LA Dodgers hat on. And hey, the Eagles have heat with me. We're still the best team in the NFL
bring it up
for the last. Hey, you make however many, you win 3 out of 6 Super Bowls, you're doing all right. Yeah. People are overstating our demise. We're going to be just fine. And but that was their day. He can talk his trash, and he deserves to. I remember when we saw him up in Waterloo, he had his Eagles stuff on. So that's his team. Good for him. Be consistent with it. But yeah, his laugh is amazing, and that's what or annoying is what Zach said in the chat. But I would say annoying and amazing. Like, I'm a big fan of his character, and I think he fits. I think he fits in the upper part of the card because he is such a good heel.
And last week I thought it was clearly a work in progress, would ideally have been curated a little bit, but he's at the stage of trying to find his voice, find his lane as a character. It seems like a backhanded compliment or a needless insult. I don't know how to frame it how you want. When I said I think a year from now he'll cringe watching it if he keeps progressing. Like, I don't think he was a finished product last week, but I don't think there's any doubt he's portraying himself in a way that's going to elicit the type of heat that a heel in his position should be going for. The laugh initially was like, what is that? But he hasn't turned heel yet. And now you see it's part of his act, and it was portending what is yet to come. This guy's getting obnoxious. He's getting too comfortable in a way that isn't as reserved and polite as he seemed to most often be in WWE. And so it feels like we're seeing this natural progression, and the laugh is a thing that he thinks is cool, and it isn't because of how he does it and who he is.
I could be wrong, but I'm under the impression the whole time he's been in AEW, he's kind of subtly been a heel. And it just, you had plausible deniability until just now. And that is my opinion on it. Oh my gosh.
Oh, what's the college sports news?
Texas, Arkansas. Texas dunked it at the buzzer to win, and they dunked it 0.2 seconds after the buzzer, so we're going to overtime. Wow. Oh, wow. Yeah. I got to see the replay. I don't know. I thought it was maybe – oh, no. Yeah, it was just after. Guy missed the layup, and the guy dunked it. And, clearly the red light. So, there you go.
All right.
I may or may not have wagered on Arkansas, so this is maybe good for me.
Well, while you do that, we'll put up the handsome image of the of
Rivian
R1S.
That's not bad. That's not bad. Certainly better than the Cybertruck. I will agree with that.
Oh, it's that is a low bar, and it definitely surpasses it. And here's Doug's score of all any priced SUV or car that he's rated, and it's at Rivian R1S, tied for the top with the McLaren F1. So there. Anyway, all right. So our sports break and our car break is over, and now we're
sorry about that. I just
no.
I was like, yeah.
What? You don't have to apologize. It's a long show, and people.
This is what I do every night. I watch college basketball. I will be in Las Vegas 3 weeks from tonight, and the Missouri Tigers are going to be a top 4 seed in the NCAA tournament and probably play 3 weeks from tomorrow. And we go every year, and I almost wish I wasn't going because Missouri's probably going to play in Wichita, but we this is a 30-year tradition we're going to keep up. So,
yeah. All right. Some Kansas City. Well, how did we get started? Oh, I know in the chat they're talking about sports insults, and let's parlay this into wrestling.
Well, he did a good job of talking about the Chargers leaving town and the Padres. I mean, that's easy heat. The Padres losing to the Dodgers. I'm not even super into baseball, and I know that. So I it's a little bit cheap, but I thought he had, like I said, he had a Philadelphia thing on. That's his team. People that know him know that. Hey, respect. That's fine. Good for you.
So I, as a policy, don't believe any local sports team references, unless it's a true national story in the news that week, belongs on national television. If you want to come out during commercial break to get heel heat, set things up, play whatever, that's fine. But I'm sorry, nobody cares about the Padres, and almost nobody cares about the Chargers. And when you're insulting fans of a football team in another city, you have 31 other markets cheering and going, yeah, those people suck too. And now you're on the side of the heel. I think it's amateurish. I think it's hack. I think it's low hanging fruit, and it just shouldn't do it. And there's many other ways to get heat other than this cheap way of getting a crowd to boo you because you're insulting their local sports team. They should be booing you because of the work and effort you've put in the last weeks or months getting them to dislike you. I think it's the lowest form of heel heat, and it also just doesn't work nationally. And if we saw Thunderdome footage of everybody around the country watching all their faces, when someone comes out and insults the Kansas City Chiefs or the Minnesota Twins or the Tampa Bay Sunrays, people are yawning. Like, nobody cares. So stop. Find a better, more sophisticated way to get heat than every city you go to insulting the local sports team, Dan.
I don't want to see him do it all the time, but to me, he's kind of a derivative heel. Like, and this was very derivative. Like I don't know why I kind of got it. Normally I'm with you, Wade. I got a kick out of it tonight. It was kind of out of nowhere that he took a shot. I mean, the Chargers, it's kind of passe. It's been so it was kind of nerdy. Like it's like he is
nerdy.
He's being a nerdy heel and he's being consistent. That's why I liked it. So I'm giving him a pass. I normally agree with you, but the Chargers have been gone for how long? And he just, I don't know. That's what I like.
So I don't know. It's like a little like sneaky subversive. It's like if you say bitch, but you're self-aware, it's overdone. You're not saying it for effect, but to make fun of all the other people who say bitch as their go-to insult. And so you're saying Ricochet's like this nerdy. He's playing up a nerdy, unself-aware heel who's just going to these tropes. Well, I mean, it's a bit of a stretch, but I'm not convinced.
It's not wrong. True. That's there you go.
I mean, I perked up when you said that, but I think there almost needs to be some distance between that and every other, MJF doing it every week on TV for a while and that kind of thing.
I definitely agree with that. I just this passed my test, and it usually doesn't for whatever reason.
Fair enough. So real quick, does Ricochet or Swerve win? I mean, do they save Swerve's title? I think they should save Swerve's title match, and Ricochet should win. But that's only if Moxley's losing the title soon, because unless you're going to turn Moxley face, you don't want Ricochet as a heel going against heel Moxley. But I don't think you want Swerve winning unless you're going to give him the world title. And I'm not sure that's the right move, because I think the title should be on Moxley until Kenny Omega beats him. So it's a conundrum.
I agree with that, but I mean, we're still waiting for Christian to get his title shot. I mean, I think Ricochet can win, and they put it off or whatever. I mean, or they can do it on TV. I mean, he's an important character, but he's not so important that he couldn't. It's weird if he loses to Moxley, but
he could. I mean, like he could bring the robe to ringside. I don't want to book a bad finish, and that's what I'm about to do. But he could It's more of like a prediction of the realm of where they could go. Is they could do Ricochet, Moxley. Fans are booing both, or maybe cheering Moxley a little. The bell rings. Nana comes to ringside, takes the rope that Ricochet set at ringside. Ricochet chases after him. He gets counted out. And the joke is Ricochet earned a world title match, got counted out in 12 seconds because 2 seconds into the match, he chased the damn robe and he lost his focus. And you make fun of him for it. Now, you don't want him to become an Austin Theory heel where people just look down and laugh at him. So again, I'm not advocating for it, but I'm saying there's a realm in which you can present this match and not have it be a straight up title match between two heels where fans end up cheering Moxley and it totally blows up Omega trying to beat this heel who everybody consistently now dislikes. And that's the thing. When you put a heel against a heel and the fans go, who do I dislike less? And then the fans cheer him and they get used to it. I don't want to be the next babyface in line to face that heel, because now you've put that heel in a situation where fans are starting to go, well, he's not so bad. We do it in the NFL all the time. Our team loses and the playoffs continue. We're like, well, who's the team I dislike the least? And then you root for them. Don't do that in pro wrestling unless you have a really good plan. All right. So from there, we got that 6-man tag, Danny Garcia, FTR against Adam Cole, Kyle O'Reilly, and Roderick Strong. It seemed to exist to set up Collision. Adam Cole getting a roll-up win over win over Garcia to earn a TNT title match. I actually like the idea of Cole having the TNT title, because I don't think Garcia's been I kind of forget he's TNT champ.
Yep.
Is he?
Yep.
Am I wrong? I'm not even 100% sure. I mean, I know they said it. I'm just like, there's so many belts and Garcia hasn't been featured. You know what I mean? So, in a way where that belt, it just felt lost in the mix. He's felt lost in the mix. I'm playing it up a little, but Cole winning it sends a signal to people. Hey, he's relevant again. He's got a title. It's the title Cody held. There's more lineage there than the international and whatever the other one is. That Okada. So yeah, I mean, I'm okay if Cole's going to win it. But the match seemed like it was just there to set up Collision.
Yeah.
And fill 11 minutes.
It seemed like it dragged quite a bit. And I'm with, if you're going to keep the Undisputed Kingdom together, it probably helps them to have something. I still think it's a mistake having the 6-man titles on the Death Riders, because it's like the belts don't even exist anymore or whatever. Yeah. You know, it's just, they had a chance to get them off there, and I felt like they should have. If you have these 6-man teams that could have, some sort of compelling things happen, and nothing ever seemed. I thought, if this match even would have been for the 6-man titles, I mean, it's not really the purpose of it because they're building these other matches, but I don't know. It's just, it seems like a wasted, and they have a lot of wasted belts in AEW. So what else is new, I guess?
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go off on that.
in the spirit of you having a long day, I don't want to get into that. So the finish, Zach Barber said the finish of this match was weird. So we have 4 people all submitting each other all at once. It was like I don't want to talk about that movie. What was no, never mind. Everyone was attached to each other, but it was like chat room, help me out. It's that horror movie that is gross. So we had that going on, and then off to the side, we have Garcia and Cole leading to the finish. I mean, I thought it was fine. I mean, it was little contrived, the one person a submission, another, but whatever. And then, Kyle O'Reilly kicking the handshake offer away, being a little heelish. I don't know if they're turning heel or not. I wouldn't be against that. But yeah, anything else to say about that?
Keep them face for at least a little while. I mean, they've turned enough. I don't care really, but I just would say that. But no, it was there. It was. I always enjoy watching FTR, but the crowd was dying, and to me it took something away from the whole match.
So Mike Myers chimes in of all times to throw up a centipede. I think that's a centipede. It's very small. Very small, yeah. And then Ryan Solario says he's human centipede, Wade. Yes, I'm pretty sure that's it. Yeah, so that's your assignment to watch that, everybody. No, you don't. I don't recommend it. All right, I got to refocus now that I'm thinking about that movie. Claudio shown backstage looking for Copeland, and what great timing, because that's when Copeland attacked him out of nowhere, and then we get concertos to the head with a bad camera angle that showed it didn't come close, poorly produced. We had Wheeler Yuta hitting Marina Shafir by accident. So we have man-on-woman violence, which, some say fair game when you're Marina Shafir especially. And when it's your own cohort, it's not intended. I mean, I understand both of those arguments. But then Willow Nightingale runs out and has an issue with that group and does the concerto. And really, I mean, Copeland got a really nice response in Australia. I think when he came out, I think it was a decent response from coming out, high-fiving the kid and all that, brawling with Claudio. But by the time this segment was done, it was drawn out. Crowd was... I mean, you don't want your world title challenger babyface a week and a half before a pay-per-view standing in the ring with this drawn-out angle, pulling on some concerto thing from the greatest hits that feels old and ancient and just, do something new. And it just went on. The timing wasn't good. It dragged, and the crowd is dead for Copeland, Dan.
Yeah. This is when I thought, and give Orange and Takeshita credit because they got him back. This is when I thought, boy, this is going to be a rough review because this show is dying on the vine. And then the main event kind of got him back. I thought Jay White was reasonably over still, but yeah, that Copeland, not a great night.
I was worried Jay White was going to turn when he was fending off Mox and he started to make his way into the ring with a chair. I'm like, he's not going to hit Copeland from behind. I was like, and then I'm like, no, that would make no sense. But I shouldn't say it would make no sense. I just didn't think it was the time for it. But there was a little bit of the body language where ooh, he's fending off Moxley, but he didn't hurt Moxley. And then I'm thinking, no, there's too many things that have happened for that to be the key. But there's so many turns in wrestling. I'm just on edge, on guard for that. Okay, so then Deonna Purrazzo and Harley Cameron. Not a lot to it, but Harley getting a win. The story is she hadn't won until recently. Then she lost, but now she won again. Excalibur called it a come from behind victory. Did you see the Minnesota Timber? Speaking of sports, Minnesota Timbers win over Oklahoma City Thunder earlier this weekend?
I heard about this because I follow the gambling. You could have made a fortune if you bet Minnesota during that game. That's all I know.
I thought of you when this was going on. I'm like, the announcers didn't bring it up. I was like, almost checked. I was watching it late at night on delay, and I was exercising after I do sometimes after these post shows. I'm night owl. And I'm watching the game, and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to put it on in the background tomorrow at my desk and watch the last half of the fourth quarter or whatever, because we were down 25 points at one point, down, I think, 20 going into the fourth quarter, down 16 with 6 minutes left. It's kind of a bummer, but 4 of our top 7 rotation players are out injured, or 3 of the top 6, whatever, 3 of the top 6, 4 of the top 7. And I'm like, oh, okay. I mean, it's whatever. It's a great team. We're in their building. And then I'm like, wait, and I start doing the sports rationalization math, like when you're down 4 touchdowns with 3 minutes to go, and you go, well, if this and this and this happens, maybe it'd be a game. We've all been there. And I did that. I'm like, but it's OKC, and it's Wolves. 3 key players are out. And then it's like, wait, now it's 12. Now it's 9. Well, all we have to do is hit 3 threes. And all OKC has to do is miss. So this has never been done before in history. The Wolves, like in 96, they had a 25-point comeback. But no number one team, nobody with the best home record, with a winning percentage that OKC has, being down 20 points going into the fourth quarter has ever lost in the history of the NBA. And so like I'm bearing the lead, but the Wolves were down 16 points with like 6 minutes left, and they tied it, went to overtime, and won in overtime. It was just like crazy.
I didn't realize that game was on the road. That makes it even more wow. Yeah. But I did the gambling
Dan, sorry.
VSIN.
Sorry, Dan,
they talked about it a lot.
That was going to say I lost my point with you. And so I was thinking during when they tied, I was like, you can bet during games, right? Like the
sure. Oh yeah.
So I was like, if someone put down like $10 on the Wolves winning the game when they were down 16 points with 7 minutes left.
Now's the time to get to hedge. Yeah, I would say.
Oh, I didn't even know what that meant. So what would they have won? $10, 6-7 minutes left. You're down 16.
I think it got to like, I don't know. It was at least 25 to 1, maybe more. So you get $250, $300, something like that.
Oh, I would think you should be a millionaire.
Well, they don't do that. These books don't give that kind of money away, but wow. I can look it up. I did hear about it, and it was like there were a lot of people speculating on the type of money that you could make. And Arkansas is up 5 with a minute left, so it might be a good night for the Kuester finances here.
I honestly, if you bet on a team that's down 16 points against the number one team in the conference in their home arena with 6 or 7 minutes left, you should be a millionaire. You should put $1 and become I know they don't do it. I'm saying that should be. Who would waste $10?
If you watch these spreads, it'll be like you could say you bet $10 and you win $300. Well, then you got to bet $2,000 the other way to get 10. They put those spreads out there where they're not gonna get burned. So
okay,
yeah.
All right. So where are we?
Is
it helping your energy level that we're straying into sports betting a little?
Oh yeah, it is.
Rejuvenate you a little, yeah.
Yeah, and Texas scored, so it's only a 3-point game. So I gotta. Oh my gosh! And I also never mind. But I need Arkansas to come home. The other part of my bet was BYU, and they're way ahead. So I'm looking smart. But they're only up 3 now. Texas scored, so we'll see what happens.
People haven't seen my eyes glaze over on the screen before they're getting close to it with all the you're losing me now.
I'm more awake here. I gotta
good. Well, I mean, I've lost people talking about this Wolves comeback. Hopefully people who like sports.
That was a big deal. I will give you that. Yeah.
Oh, and Anthony Edwards didn't even play during the comeback. It was like, it wasn't garbage time because the Wolves have a great bench of young players, but they put the young players out there who are getting a lot of time with these injured players, and they didn't put Anthony Edwards back in until like 3 minutes into overtime. These young, like 3 of the rookies were out there, and making this comeback against best team in the league, or best team in the West at least. Okay, this all started because Cameron got what Excalibur called a come from behind victory. That's what triggered the last like 20 minutes of this diversion. So what do you think of Harley Cameron's character, Dan?
I think she's tremendous. All the stuff she did building the Mercedes match, that interview, which went from, silly to serious, was fantastic. She does a lot of stuff on her social media that kind of tells a consistent story. And I thought this was, it was a better match than I expected. And Adriana Peraza's a good wrestler, and that certainly helps. But, I thought this was pretty solid. And, again, she's fairly inexperienced, but she's got something. And, I'm glad they're at least not squandering it.
Yeah. So upside for her, where is she a year from now?
It wouldn't be unheard of for her to be a champion there. But, I think it's more of a matter of at the stage of her career that she's going to continue to be an important part of the show a year from now. I would say that's more than anything. She's got so many talents, and she's compelling to watch. I feel like sometimes the women's division can be a bit of a slog. I probably shouldn't say that, but this is something that can do a better job. And the crowd again wasn't like overwhelming for her, but they were more with her than they were with Copeland, and it wasn't particularly close.
Yep. Should they tone down the ventriloquism stuff? Should it be more about a personality, and every once in a while she kind of introduces something kind of eclectic, and a little out there? That's part of her charm. Or do you lean in on that every week, all the time, or do you let it be?
I think that was unique to the Mercedes buildup, and I think that they can get to a more, and again, like her, I'm learning, I'm getting better, I'm, trying to excel here. I mean, that's a compelling story. That's as old as time.
Mm-hmm. All right. So then main event time. Takeshita and Cassidy. I thought they did a nice video package on Cassidy's history as international champion. Then set up what the stakes are in this match to build up to it. Winner faces Omega. And then we had a 12-minute match with some of the Orange Cassidy stuff that I don't think the sunglasses stuff, it's too contrived. I just there's no reason to believe Orange Cassidy would have a spare pair of glasses in his pocket if someone takes his glasses off and breaks them. I did like the touch of Takeshita actually chewing on the glasses in his mouth a little bit, before he threw them aside. So we had that, but I mean, the match itself, Cassidy's a really good wrestler. Takeshita's a really good wrestler. It was a good match. What'd you think of, and it was a clean win for Takeshita, which it should be. Clean enough, although there was that point where Cassidy decided to turn and yell at Don Callis and take off the glasses at ringside when he was on a roll, and then it backfired. Now, it didn't lead to the finish directly, but it did shortly thereafter. So to me, that's a babyface losing focus and making a dumb decision, undisciplined. And so I didn't think that was worth it. I think he should have done it earlier in the match when it was, clear it wasn't a disadvantage to him. But anyway, yeah.
I thought this was a little better match than I expected, and I had reasonably high expectations. I knew deep down who was winning the match, but at times you kind of halfway question yourself for a second there. And sometimes I forget that Orange Cassidy can do some pretty cool stuff. And I thought, and Takeshita, I mean, he's been great lately. I mean, the thing with Oleg Bolton, if you haven't seen that, it's worth going on your way to see. This was really, really good, and I expect he and Kenny to have an excellent, excellent match. So this kind of built anticipation for that. Not like the most cliffhanger main event they could produce, but again, paint by numbers. I think that's okay. You got one guy slightly ahead of the other guy, and he wins, and he's going to something bigger. And there's nothing wrong with that. Week and a half out from the pay-per-view.
Yep. All right, I'm going to wrap up, Dan, just skimming through a couple emails that we got and see if they hit on any points we didn't, and then we'll sign off. I'll keep an eye on the chat also. Good conversation with the chat today. By the way, Rizella says Takeshita is the guy in the chat. Takeshita is the guy everybody thought Okada was going to be in AEW. Interesting. And back to the puppets. I'm David Bryant says, I wouldn't lean into it every week, but I like how they used it. August wants to buy a Mercedes puppet now. He was our on-site correspondent last week about Dynamite. And then standard deviation, I like his idea. I keep the puppets away. Then a few months from now, she brings it back and buddies up with Mercedes. I liked it if keeping it away and bringing it back.
It doesn't have to. They should keep it in the holster for sure.
And Rizzo said, I think Harley could reach Bayley-like levels as someone that wasn't a blue chipper prospect, but improved quickly and more importantly, connected with the audience. David Bryant says, the problem with waiting for Cameron to get more reps in the ring is you miss striking while the iron is hot. He made that case in his AEW Collision hits and misses that went up this week. AEW has been great at catching lightning in a bottle and often at cooking it. And Kyle Fassel says, I feel you, David. True. Check out David's can't miss AEW Collision hits and misses at PWTorch.com. It's worth going to. You can go to the opinion section at the website and find it pretty quickly. All right. So JB from Detroit says, MJF's backstage attack on Christopher Daniels seemed to elicit some real boost from the live crowd. That tells me the face-heel alignment is really working. And this MJF Hangman feud really seems to be getting both characters on track after seemingly a long time of meandering. We covered that earlier, Dan. Agree. 2, does Cope have all the bells and whistles? Does he have to have all the bells and whistles every time he makes an appearance? Opening the show tonight by appearing in an ambulance and telling the Death Riders something to the effect of he found their home and it was beyond tacky. That is my thing with Copeland. There's like not a real middle ground. He's either like, I say it all the time, I'll say it again. He's like the guy trying to sell you, or the trusting mountain bike salesman. Like, oh, what price point do I? What are the fees? You totally trust this guy. Like, just nice, calm guy. Seems happy with life. You can imagine him biking in the mountains. Or wide-eyed, raging maniac. I'm gonna kill you. And I think there's this vast middle ground he'd be better in. And a lot of it just sort of feels like tropey, like, oh, I'm going to sit in an ambulance and I'm going to get real serious and lean in.
Well, what about when they were out the ambulance when they took him away? Like, I didn't like that.
Yeah.
Like, why are they the ones patting the ambulance on the door and saying you can go?
Yep.
Like, what kind of company allows that? Like, I don't.
Another little detail. Yep. The Cal's family and Learning Tree uniting against Will Ospreay certainly makes more sense than Learning Tree and the Death Riders uniting against other babyface factions. Yeah, for sure. I feel as though the Ospreay-Fletcher rivalry is peaking at just the right time for their cage match at Revolution. The crowd reaction tonight felt very invested and engaged in their brawl to the stance. I agree with that, Dan.
Yeah.
They're invested in Fletcher as a heel and Callis as
his
manager.
Yeah, and I liked he went up in the stands after him. Yep.
Yep. I love matching up the Outrunners and Murder Machines tonight. I legitimately didn't have a strong idea who's going to win, so each pinfall attempt held my attention. Now you have two viable tag team matches set for Hurt Syndicate in the future with the Outrunners and the Murder Machines, who were protected in their loss and looked very strong throughout the match. We disagree on a few things there. I don't think they were protected. They were protected, but in a way that wasn't worth the protection. And the match was bad enough. I don't want to see necessarily either of them. Well, I think they'll be better against. I think both teams would look better against other teams. I think there was a chemistry issue with those two teams in particular that probably won't get replicated with a Hurt Syndicate. Ricochet's doing a great job of being an annoying, grating heel. He's hitting all the notes, low-hanging sports insults, sniveling delivery, irritating call to end every promo. I can appreciate the fact that he's truly buying into the character. It's working and feeling more natural. Do you agree with JB from Detroit? Well, you do a little bit on that. We had our little debate over the low-hanging sports insults, but like you, he said low-hanging fruit insults. That's not an insult. That's a feature, not a flaw. Yeah.
He's the exception to the rule. That's my opinion.
Well, you talked me into reconsidering. We'll see. We'll keep an eye on it. With the number of contender stipulation being put on Swerve Ricochet at Revolution, Swerve has to win, correctly? A strong babyface is presumably needed to oppose Mox and the Death Riders after I assume Mox retains against Copeland. So they can do Swerve and Moxley. And then if Nana is turning heel, and I don't want it, but if he is, he could turn on Swerve in that match with Moxley, which would then rev up the Ricochet Swerve feud again, and be an excuse for Swerve losing. I mean, they could tell that story too. Again, I don't want them to turn Nana. It's not the end of the world, obviously, but the Nana wrinkle being added was another area of layering and intrigue. Swerve must win to regain Nana's robe to presumably retain Nana's managerial services. I wonder if this is foreshadowing a rift between the two, even if Swerve beats Ricochet and gets the robe back. You could say the robe's so important to Nana, he'd rather be with a robe than with Swerve. I mean,
it's possible.
Yeah. I thought they were going to save Cole Garcia for the TNT title at Revolution, but it's scheduled for this Saturday in Collision. What are the chances it's a screwy finish to continue the feud to the pay-per-view, possibly with a stipulation? I think odds are high that, Dan.
Yeah. It's possible.
Or just a rematch. Garcia gets a rematch. Just keep it basic.
They
Don't
do
a big
that
angle.
Exactly. Yeah.
Are we going to get a mixed tag with Mox and Marina against Copeland and Willow between now and Revolution? Maybe that gets announced for Dynamite next week.
Certainly. I mean, we're short on time, but it is possible.
Yeah. I'm very glad to see how the Cameron's continuing to carry momentum on the Dynamite stage. He hasn't been MIA since Grand Slam Australia. That being said, I also think AEW could be doing a lot more with Deonna Purrazzo. I think the idea of I like the idea of Vendetta, but they should be a step above simply jobbers to the stars. As always, love the show and go VIP. All right. Chris Johnson says, didn't play an email tonight, but I found the opening segment irritating enough to send thoughts. First, as a Texan, the truck that Hangman drove up in was ridiculous. I don't see how it fits his character at all. And if it was just a cute joke, why? I know it's an expensive truck, but it ain't cowboy shit. But you know what? It doesn't fit his character, but it fits him. Like, Adam Page, you'd expect to be driving a cool, EV off-road, super capable off-road EV. But it's not enough. I mean, the Property Brothers drove it like last season on one of their HTV shows. I think it's the only other time it's been like in the public eye. But it's an emerging brand, and so it's kind of cool. But I don't disagree. It doesn't necessarily fit. Match the character.
I would say if he had like a 1989 F-150, I probably would have been. I wouldn't have been taken aback by it. I was like,
Yeah.
what is that? Like, I would be like, that's what the cowboy would really drive. I know that's not environmentally great or whatever.
Oh
in
no,
this day and age, but, you know.
I do. I totally concede that point. I mean, like, it's a cool car, but it's not necessarily fitting the Hangman persona. Now he did put a horn on the hood.
The horns, yeah,
yeah,
the
horns
horns
on the
were.
hood. Yeah,
I like that touch.
yeah, but yeah, the line from Chris. I know it's an expensive truck, but it ain't cowboy shit. I mean, there's a point there. I'm fine with a Hangman squash, but did we need it? Sure. I mean, well, we didn't need it, but I mean, it was a conduit to get to the next thing. Yeah.
Why not? Would be the counter to that.
Yeah. So Daniels is bleeding from the head, obviously hurt, and there are medics seemingly 15 feet away, directly in front of him. Were they waiting for a wrestler to tell him it's okay to help Daniels? Then when they got to work, the one medic gently dabbed blood off of Daniels' chin. Yeah, the dabbing of the blood, it's like when medics are like, oh, let me, it's like, the NBA is more serious about like tiny little surface level cuts. It was comical, but to me, this was just really poorly executed. Yeah. So Dan, you got some people independently backing up your
Thank you.
Osprey's great, but I have no idea what they're talking about with bounties. Fun match though. Yeah, bounties, it's kind of corny in wrestling. I mean, we gotta just stipulate to that. I did not like the backstage Mercedes segment, and I don't know who she was talking to. I know she said her name, but I still don't know. Oh, and reset the bitchometer. Yeah, unfortunately. Hey, the Outrunners with Omaha Mavericks. That's big time, Dan.
I mean, I think that's sarcasm.
No, but
okay.
He has one exclamation mark, not three, so it seems serious.
Okay,
Not
okay.
I think three
like,
exclamation marks is sarcasm.
I mean, it's not the Lakers or anything or the Timberwolves, but yeah, I mean, it was a cool thing. Like they won their league. They won their league. Yeah, they're not the AAA team anyway, and that was their like league championship, I think, clinching game, and it was. I mean, I thought it was hilarious when I saw it on SportsCenter. I just thought, okay,
if that was like Kenny Omega and AEW made like a really big deal out of it, okay, it's the Omaha Mavericks, but it's the Outrunners. Yeah. Omaha Mavericks it's their category.
That's their level. And it was cool and it was fun. And those players, the players were just loving it. Like they should have showed more of the clip when these players are out dropping their elbows on the trash cans and stuff. And it was a really cool segment. I'm like, this is fun. Good for these guys.
Yeah. Okay. He says I didn't like the Outrunners match. Yeah. Well, astute observation. That was lousy. I swear I've heard a wrestler ask, "Are you stupid or are you dumb?" 3 times in the last 3 months, and I think that number should be 0. Totally agree.
Well, that was also derivative, I think, when whoever said it tonight. I'm not saying it makes it.
Was Mercedes the one saying it before?
Mercedes has been saying it forever, and it's Ricochet. Yeah. Ricochet's being
playing, and
it's the same thing. Like anybody else, I would have hated it. Ricochet's being a purposeful idiot.
So this is little 3D chess. I criticized him doing tropes and low hanging fruit, and that is a feature, not a flaw of his character right now. And he's leaning in. Okay, it might seem obvious to me when Max Caster first said, "I'm the greatest."
Trust me, I know
the best in the world. I was like, Is he like trying to play this serious? And I was like, what? Oh, of course not. He's not. He's being totally fake. Which I was glad, but I didn't trust he wasn't. I'm like, well, this is weird. I hope he's not serious. Are you excited, Dan? What's going on?
Game over. Game over. Okay. Arkansas wins.
So you get to keep your house.
Yeah, I can make the mortgage. It's the end of the month's coming. I got to pay the mortgage. It's a good thing.
You can buy Rivian. I have to give Ricochet this. He's getting the closest thing to heel heat of anyone on the show. Solid segment from Swerve and Ricochet tonight. It's the basics. Face, heel, clear angles, the basics. And no scissors is a plus. This increased my interest in seeing their match. That's the thing. Less is more. It doesn't encompass everything all the time. But, like, we don't need scissors. Like, it just, Ricochet doesn't need, no one should have scissors in pro wrestling. It's just dumb. Same thing with wrenches and screwdrivers. Like, come on. Let the wrestlers tell the story. Let the moves in the ring be what we're fighting for in belts, and stop burning down houses and stabbing people and suffocating people. All right. Adam Cole was the color of a human being tonight. I don't know if he's getting enough to eat. It really stands out how thin he is when he's in the ring with FTR, but even Garcia looks big next to Adam Cole. Also, I don't know why these guys are fighting. Maybe that's on me. It wasn't well laid out. Again, the details hurt the Death Riders Cope segment in the ring when Jay White enters while Cope is on the ground, selling, and Claudio's above him with the chair. They cut to Jay White. They cut back, and Claudio's doubled over, waiting for the chair shot from Cope. I guess Copeland hit him low with a chair, but we didn't see it. Yeah, there's some sloppy, bad decisions in production tonight. I did like Marina Shafir taking the inadvertent shot from Wheeler Yuta. Clever way to have her be neutralized, but the babyface men shouldn't have considered the concerto on Marina. They could have had Willow come in and set it up. Good point. The men were setting her up for that, and that can make some people uncomfortable. Fair, unfair, the gender aspect of it. And yeah, just Willow come in and go, hey guys, do this, lead the charge. And finally, really impressive match with Orange and Takeshita. Super fun. The booking for this international title deal is strange, right? What was gained by doing it this way? Yeah, I mean, it was just the journey they wanted to take us on to have a TV main event. I think they booked backwards from the pay-per-view, and I don't have a big problem with it. I think the naming of it as this, Revolution, International, Invitational, whatever, that's the thing that I think people thought, okay, come on. Can we just have a match and not give it a special name?
Yeah, I find myself sometimes being like, did Kenny win the title and I forgot? And I know he didn't, but you're right. I agree.
The name, it just felt a little much. But I think the path is fine. I mean, even the path was a little much, but not in a way that matters. Okay. Any Ramen Noodle frames that as email from a Debbie Downer. Ramen, name two things that you think were unfair criticism and unreasonable criticism in that. AEW needs to listen to people who are watching a show going, I don't know if I want to watch next week. That's how they grow, is by being open-minded to criticism and not. I think he made good points, Dan.
Well, and I would say that, some of the criticisms that you've been making or Todd's been making or even I've made on occasion on here, it seems like some of them are getting through. So I appreciate that. And I hope for continued improvement on the show.
Yeah. As far as Copeland versus Adam Cole, standard deviation says, one thing I appreciate about Copeland is he brings new ideas for the table each week. I think they're ideas from like 2006 almost always. But anyways, in contrast, Adam Cole's playing an 8-year-old character with old catchphrases and a faction name that lacks creativity. I think there's room for improvement in both areas. But Adam Copeland's talented. I just think he's either trying too hard or he's a normal guy. And I think there's this like middle ground to that's lush and rich full of possibilities for him that will connect more with the audience. It's just, he's the epitome of hashtag try hard. Do people say hashtag anymore? Probably not. I'll stop.
I don't think so.
Yeah. I caught myself. I'm going to self-criticize myself there. It's like living rent free in your head. It's like, don't say that anymore. That's like 4 years past now. All right, cool. Dan, anything else you want to add? We kind of worked our way through. And I mean, it's a little longer than I wanted to go because I know you're tired. But, the sports stuff added about 25 minutes.
Once that game went to overtime, I was committed for a while anyway, Wade. So it all worked out great. And always enjoy the interactions with everybody. Great to catch up with you. And appreciate being on here. A fun evening. So thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Dan. Appreciate it. We'll let Dan go, and we'll close just a couple plugs here. Join me live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday night here on YouTube. Also Saturday night, Brandon LeClaire will be hosting Wrestling Night in America. You can check out my detailed reports on Raw, Dynamite, and SmackDown at PWTorch.com. If you have not yet, subscribe to the red logo and blue logo versions of the Wade Keller shows, the post shows, and the podcasts. Search Wade Keller in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, wherever, and subscribe for free or upgrade to a VIP membership, which is obviously for us even better. You get all our shows with commercial breaks edited out. It just jumps right past the commercial breaks, the in-house ads, and the third-party digital ad insertions. And we appreciate everybody who's already doing that, and we encourage you to do it. You can get a 7-day free trial through Patreon and Spotify. Just search PWTorch VIP, and that'll pop up. You can see if it's worth it for you to not only have the ad-free versions of these shows, but also the all the VIP exclusive shows. With a 7-day free trial, you get a chance to experience that. Or you can go full VIP, pwtorch.com/govip. That gives you access to our ad-free website, 35 plus years of archives, customizable podcast feeds that are compatible without advanced settings or special passwords and all that on Apple Podcasts and many popular iOS and Android apps. It's a really slick setup. You don't have to be super tech savvy for this to work. You'll get an email. There's a link. Click it on your iPhone. Boom. It'll sign you up. pwtorch.com/govip. And as always, we appreciate if you like this show, if you comment below, and you subscribe to our channel if you're watching us on YouTube, or give us a 5-star rating if you're listening to us on on the podcast side of things. That'll do it for me for today. Thanks, everybody. Check out the flagship this week over on the Blue Logo Show. It's the podcast version. You can stream it live from PWTorch.com or subscribe by searching Wade Keller. Thanks, everybody. Thanks to the chat room for all of your conversation today. Standard Deviation said, great show, Wade and Dan. Cheers. David Bryant says, good show tonight. And Standard Deviation says, I always forget to like the show. The prompt works. Thank you. Kyle Fassel says, thanks, Wade, Dan, and chat. Goodfellas 1422 says, cheers, host. Cheers, chat. Ramen Noodle says, great show, guys. Thanks. Always love a Dan show. Yeah, that'll do it. Thanks, everybody.